Welcome to our channel. Russia's withdrawal from northeastern Ukraine is a setback for Moscow, but it opens the door to an even greater possibility. Ukrainian forces will expand south to try to retake the occupied territory in the eastern Donbas region, with a successful counteroffensive they have launched. This will put the Donbas, the Kremlin's biggest target in the war, under a great threat. The situation in which the Russian army fell as a result of the sudden raid of the Ukraine is deplorable. The Ukrainian armed forces neutralized many Russian senior officers in the region and captured one of Russia's most important generals in the Donbas region. It is also stated that many high-ranking Russian officers fled the area. Such a great loss of high-ranking officers caused the Russian army, which fled from the front in fear, to fall against each other. Vladimir Putin's army has come to the brink of anarchy after some troops turned their guns on their fleeing comrades. Ukraine's Kharkiv counterattack completely surprised the Russian army and sent shockwaves over the Kremlin. Russian troops are directed northeast and are in a complete retreat, seemingly unable to stop the relentless offensive of Kiev. Panicked Russian soldiers are reported to have abandoned their troops and fled to escape the massacre. But the fugitives' behavior enraged some elements in Putin's army, who decided to apply brute justice to his fleeing comrades. A Ukrainian drone captured the moment when a Russian Tiger military vehicle was heading towards some fleeing troops from the front lines. The soldiers dismounted from the 4x4 Tiger and began shooting their deserting comrades in cold blood. The commander of the Ukrainian troops in the east of the country, Brigadier General Vladimir Shvedyuk, described the gruesome event in detail. The incident was chilling for Putin. Brigadier General Vladimir Shvedyuk said, "A few Russian soldiers rushed behind them. We've seen this very well on the internet. A Russian Tiger from which his own soldiers rode toward the fleeing Russian soldiers. After a short speech, the soldiers shot the deserters. They didn't even think about taking the bodies. All this was recorded on video, and everyone who saw it was very surprised." Putin and his commanders faced a major dilemma as they tried to respond to counterattacks from two fronts. Experts believe that the Kremlin should make a decision on whether to send reinforcements from the Kherson front to the Kharkiv region to help establish new lines of defense. Before the Kharkiv offensive, Russian commanders had sent some of their most experienced and skilled troops to the Kherson region. These units included sailors and paratrooper detachments from the airborne divisions. The decision to deploy troops to the north could pave the way for the Ukrainian army to capture the precious city of Kherson. Alternatively, if the Kremlin decides against such a move, the Kiev army could soon enter the Luhansk province, which it will have to surrender to the Russians in the summer. Considering that Putin's army is not making any progress in Donetsk, Luhansk's transfer to the Ukrainian armed forces may end all hopes for Putin. The Ukrainian pressure in Kherson, combined with the rapid counterattack in Kharkiv, presents the Russians with a grim dilemma of time and space. Russia probably does not have enough reserves to complete the formation of a new defensive line along the Oskil River, because reportedly Ukrainian forces can continue to advance in this position if they wish. Russia has to withdraw forces from other parts of the battlefield to establish defensive lines further east from the Oskil River, to ensure that troops can hold the Luhansk Oblast border or a line as close to it as possible. Despite this, Russian troops near Bakhmut and Donetsk city continue offensive operations, as if unaware of the danger to Luhansk, and the Russian forces in Kherson still face the threat of further attacks on this axis. Russian President Vladimir Putin will have to wait too long to order reinforcements to the Luhansk line, thereby compromising the defense of Kherson. Or he risks making a common but fatal mistake by instead ending offensive operations around Bakhmut and Donetsk city, without taking up positions to defend against ongoing Ukrainian attacks. This great defeat also tells us something very different: the inability and incompetence of the Russian army, which was seen as the second strongest army in the eyes of the world before February 24th, has also emerged. A senior Pentagon official said the war in Ukraine showed Russia was not as militarily capable as we believed before Vladimir Putin's troops invaded. Undersecretary for the Defense Policy Colin Kahl said China poses a greater risk to the United States and world order than Russia, but warned that Moscow is still a dangerous actor. referring to the time before Putin launched his full-scale invasion on February 24th after months of recruiting. Kahl said Russia was not as capable, honest, and traditional as some of us considered it 6 or 8 months ago. Russia suffered a massive loss of troops and equipment and failed in its attempt to take Kiev. Months have passed since the siege of Kiev, and we witnessed the rise of the Ukrainian armed forces as the Russian army was losing more and more power in the region. The fire that started in Kherson has now spread to Kharkiv and is advancing by crushing the Russian army like an ant. The Air Force Command of the Ukrainian Armed Forces claimed on Saturday that it destroyed at least $157.5 million worth of Russian aircraft and weapons in just 3 days. But Kahl said on Wednesday, despite reported setbacks, Russia has shown to be an extraordinarily dangerous and reckless power, warning that a weakened Russia is becoming more dangerous on the international stage. He talked about how Russia now needs to align more and seek the help of North Korea and Iran. It is reported that Russia has purchased Mohair 6 and Shahed series unmanned aerial vehicles from Iran. It was also reported this week that Moscow began searching for artillery shells and rockets from Pyongyang. This was because it was shut down from global supply chains due to sanctions, and China avoided providing Moscow with the technology it needed for war equipment, while remaining an ally of Russia. Even his closest ally seems to have betrayed Putin. Although he seems to be on the side of Russia on the surface, we have seen that Chinese President Xi abandoned Putin many times during the war due to his economic relations. This was not the end. Xi may fail Putin many more times, because the Russian president's most trusted partner in arms procurement is still China. Kahl said that while his forces are busy fighting in Ukraine, Moscow will increasingly turn to unconventional capabilities, such as nuclear, cyber, and space, as well as campaigns of misinformation and disinformation. Russia does not challenge the United States and the rules-based international order in the long run that China does, Kahl told the Defense News Conference on Wednesday. Regarding the Chinese threat, Kahl said that Russia's experience in Ukraine is Beijing's. He added that he could be more cautious about Taiwan. Zelensky called for more money and weapons to be allocated for the protection of lands recently won from Russia. The Ukrainian army is actively using Western weapons. Now, many troops have switched to standard NATO equipment, including artillery and ammunition. Multiple rocket launcher systems, such as the American HIMARS, were used in Kharkiv and Kherson. Our main goal is to occupy our entire territory, says Zelensky. What Russian trophies were captured by the armed forces of Ukraine? A tank company, the key to Zoopark and Orlony. The Russians have suffered heavy losses since the beginning of the invasion, and a significant amount of Russian weapons were also destroyed or captured. Not only is Vladimir Putin's army in eastern Ukraine demoralized, it also has ammunition problems. According to American intelligence, Moscow has ordered millions of artillery shells and missiles from North Korea. Russia starts buying weapons from North Korea, U.S. intelligence. The Ukrainians have the ability to surprise. How did the armed forces manage to launch a successful offensive, and what are the dangers? At first glance, such data seems dubious. After all, according to the Western media, Russia inherited millions of artillery shells from the Soviet Union and need not turn to rogue states to collect enough ammunition and other technology for the war in Ukraine. However, an agreement with North Korea is quite likely. Already in the early 2000s, during the Second Chechen War, the Russian army complained about the lack of 122 and 152 millimeter artillery shells. After the 2008 Russo-Georgian War, a Russian military expert described artillery as a forgotten branch of the army. Most of the Soviet reserves were insufficiently stockpiled, so they had to be partially destroyed and not adequately replenished. The situation in Ukraine is changing rapidly, and it is possible that sometimes there will be changes that will not be reflected in the maps.